Wow, this is cool. If you hear any heckling, my children are in the audience. It's not going that bad. It's just they're just doing what they're supposed to do. Cool. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming. What my talk should be really called is 12 million data points. But if I called it that, you'd have all stayed in the foyer and waited for the second talk. So I'm today talk to you about 12 million lessons in happiness and the super happiness suit with inbuilt emotional deflector field. Sometimes I wish I'd given it a shorter title, but you know, that's it. So let's move on. Just to get everyone up to speed, I was invited to be a speaker because I wrote a book called Freedom to be Happy. And to save you all £7 and to read my book so you don't have to, I'm just going to give you the synopsis in 30 seconds, which is happier employees are more creative, more productive, sell more, and create better financial outcomes for their organizations. So that's research and evidence from multiple countries over a 28-year period. So I just want to get everyone up to speed so that everything I share with you, I'm like one of those high-maintenance artists that only wants to do their new work. So we're just going to share with you the new stuff. And I don't expect you to leave this presentation like high-fiving each other and go, oh my God, that's amazing. I expect you just to learn some new cool stuff, and you might go away and use some of it somewhere. So that's my intro. We're going to talk to you about what we've learned from 1 million human beings. This is a story about all of you. So what is this super happiness suit with inbuilt emotional deflector field, which is, the name is way too long, actually is? We all wear, and this is what we've learned, we all wear this super happiness suit to work. And it's to protect us. It protects us everything from bad bosses to competitive colleagues. We also have this emotional deflector field to be able to just turn up any emotion we need to. Been to a funeral on Tuesday, Wednesday have to go into a big pitch, big meeting, and suddenly have to put that happy face on. We all do it, we all wear it. You can't see it, touch it, or feel it, but it is there. People talk about the mask that we wear. It's way more than that. We are way more sophisticated at hiding our emotions than just behind a mask. But this suit comes with a cost. If we just take this room, in the last year, if this was a complete workforce here, 29% of the people in this room would have reported being bullied at work. 36% of the people in this room would have reported that they'd been discriminated against at work. And the big one from the era that we've been in the pandemic, 52% of us in this room will have experienced burnout in the last year. And when you take that up to a national level, and the real tragedy, if you take a full Wembley Stadium, if you've been there to a gig, football, whatever it is, in that year, in the next year, 8 people that were in that stadium will go on to kill themselves. And this is the cost, right? This is the cost of us not sharing our emotions. So I'm now just going to share with you some stuff that we've learned that might help. So is this a surprise? Is this a surprise that people are feeling burnt out? In the pink line, you will see that across the world, engagement, which is like what many companies track, has been about average over the pandemic in the last couple of years. But as you'll see in the yellow line, happiness has been well below the average. So it's not a surprise that we're hearing all these headlines like the Great Resignation, toxic work cultures. It's there. People have been feeling it, and they'll tell us anonymously, but they're not telling their bosses. So it's sitting there and it's happening, but we're all wearing these super happiness suits, pretending everything's okay. So what have we learned across 100 countries? So starting with the top 4, what actually drives happiness? So psychological safety. For me, psychological safety is that you make a mistake at work and your boss doesn't fire you for it. Like making mistakes is learning. If you make the same mistake 20 times in a row, that's a different conversation. Freedom to take opportunities, feelings of acknowledgement. But the number one driver of happiness across every country that we work in is positive relationships. But what is the source of relationships? The source of relationships is emotions. So you can't form a real relationship with someone unless you actually share your real emotions. So if you're pretending to be this other person, you're creating this like made-up relationship. And the minute there's tough times, you might not get through those tough times in the relationship. And I've been described as too emotional at work. Maybe some of you have too. But what we're doing at that point, the point at which we tell people they're too emotional at work, we're actually cutting off the source of relationships. If we're cutting off the source of relationships, we're cutting off the source of happiness. If we're cutting off the source of happiness, we're cutting off the source of performance. So telling people they're too emotional it's actually a business issue. Where I think sometimes this gets confused is people confuse the act with the emotion, right? So let's just take a scenario at work. Someone steals your work, okay? I'm just making up this scenario, and they pass it off as theirs. You are totally okay to feel angry, right? That's a normal emotion. Punching them in the face over it, that's an illegal act, right? That you probably shouldn't be doing. But I don't want to get into that today. But what we've got to do is decouple the feeling, how you feel, and the action, and not label the two together. Because if we do, and we box it all together, we're actually cutting off the source of performance, which is not only is that a societal issue, that's a business issue as well. So can we remove our happiness suit now? We know all this stuff. We've got all these data points. We know what makes people happy. Can we remove our happiness suit? Unfortunately, the answer is no, no, and no. The reason is because we have these police officers in this fictional world called the toxic positivity police. Now, the problem is, if you remove your happiness suit and just start sharing how you feel in a work environment that is not ready, you'll be branded a troublemaker. In some scenarios, you get fired. So the lesson here is think of the environment at work like an astronaut landing on Mars and taking off their suit before the environment is ready. So I'm pro all this stuff like positive relationships, but that needs to be fixed before, or the person in a normal corporate company, and you may work in companies that are way more encouraging than that, and that's great, but most people don't, as we've seen in the stats. Don't make happiness a target. This is a mistake even the happiness index made, because you start getting all these metrics on happiness and then you're like, we want to make everyone happier. That makes people unhappy. Don't do that. What we found is that happiness is like a healthy heartbeat, right? It's supposed to go up, it's supposed to go down, it's supposed to go up, it's supposed to go down. If you start walking around the office telling people to be happy, it's not a good idea. What does healthy change look like? This graph here, this is, and Josh is here. Could everyone give Josh a round of applause, please? You don't know who he is, but give him a round of applause. So about 6 weeks ago, I went to Josh and said, I've got a TED Talk to do, I need some really cool data. And Josh brought me this data. What we found is every time happiness goes up, right, also goes down. Every time happiness goes up, also goes down. So you're thinking, why would I bother? If it's going to go up, but it's always going to go down, what's the point? What we found, and when I say we, I mean Josh, but we as a company, an organization, we have found that actually every time it goes up, the more regularly you do it, like a heartbeat, it becomes healthier. So the learning point here is that this stuff takes practice, right? And the best analogy that I can give you, just put your hand up if you've ever spent a year in the woods shouting at a tree to grow. Anyone ever done that? Oh, there's a couple up there, they have. That's what it's like, right? That's the equivalent of telling people to be happy at work. It doesn't work. What you need to do is focus on the key ingredients: safety, freedom, acknowledgement, and relationships. Connectivity isn't just for the internet. For me, I'm like a major nature nerd, so I love reading about all this stuff. And I don't know if you saw David Attenborough recently talking about in nature with trees, they've found a mycelium layer. So it's basically a layer of fungi below the soil that connect trees. So the headline is, the Daily Mail headline is trees can talk to each other. What they actually mean is they're communicating and sharing resources. The second big thing that I want to share with you that we've learned is that we are the average happiness of our team, our family, our community. So I don't have any major insight to give you on what you should do with that. I just want to share with you that that is what we are seeing. So people talk about emotions being contagious all the time. And like we heard from Ken Dodd earlier, everyone's got opinions on happiness, but this is what we're observing. So what we see is the importance of, if you look at most self-help books, they tell you to look inside. What we're realizing is that actually happiness is something you've got to look outside of yourself and look to the people around you. But don't make the mistake of then telling them people to cheer up because that's making you unhappy. That's not going to work. But I'm just sharing with you what is happening. So we're seeing that, guess what? Human beings are part of nature. We kind of know this anyway, but now the data is starting to show that. So the conclusion, if we want to remove our super happiness suits with inbuilt emotional deflector fields, it's the last time I'm going to say that in this presentation, We need to create safe environments first. But for the really cool part, right, all this stuff, all these people, all these things that I've been talking about, like these 12 million data points, these 100 countries, because this stuff's universal, right? The language changes, but human beings are human beings across the world. Shocking surprise there. From these 1 million human beings is you just have to take the word work out of this, because we've observed this at work, but it doesn't take an absolute genius to work out. This stuff's applied to the rest of your life. That's the reality, guys. All of this stuff we're talking about here, safety, freedom, acknowledgement, relationships, it's not just for work. This is the stuff that you can take out of this room today, whether that be your partner, your sibling, your colleagues, or whatever. Take this stuff away, those two major learnings about happiness, practicing happiness, and happiness being a team sport. Take that away. That's all I want you guys to do. Take that away. Think about that data and think about how you can apply that into your life. And breathe.